I think everybody in this room is against it, so I'll elaborate on that briefly. I wrote a letter to the Attorney General asking him to file a lawsuit to repeal Obamacare. He didn't, but I was the chief signer and wrote the letter to do that. I signed an amicus brief also asking that. I blocked, if you look in the 2011 session, I voted to block multiple times funding to fund a state exchange, various things leading up to that. Once we lost the presidential election, once we failed to win the Senate, once the Supreme Court declared it constitutional, doesn't mean we give up the fight, but it also means that you have to look at things through the lens of the fact that the law was implemented in January 14, and how does it affect our citizens? So how does it affect our citizens? $600 million in tax increases this year in Arkansas. It's happening now, it's already out of your paychecks. $500 million in Medicare cuts. If you don't think those are real, I'd encourage you to go talk to Baxter Regional. That's not made up money, that's not funny money, that's not Obamacare money. It's real money getting cut from your hospital that's affecting their services. Go ask them about RAC audits that are happening and what that means for money they're unable to recoup because of ACA. Ask those questions, not to any politician standing up here that can recite a talking point or read a speech. Go talk to providers and see the real effects of ACA that are in our community until we're able to repeal it. $1.25 billion out of Arkansas's economy every year being sent to Washington through tax increases, Medicare cuts. So what does it mean? Can we make it better by dealing with it, or do we make the problems worse by dealing with them? I believe the private option, try to use a simple saying, take the bull by the horns and deal with the problem and try to mitigate the effects of ACA until we can win the Senate, which is what I was working to do before I ran for this, and actually repeal the law. So why did I vote for it? I think it pulls a little bit of that money back into the state economy, which I think is good for the economy. I think more than anything, though, it helps keep premiums low, which are important because you're at, I don't have time to go into a lot of those reasons, but at the end of the day, I'd be happy to share with them more because I can tell you the very specific things. I would just generally state in conclusion that we can agree on a target that we want, which is repeal of ACA, where a lot of you in this room will disagree with me, is a tactic that we took to maybe mitigate those things until a time that we can actually repeal it. And I think that's what we did. We made the federal government negotiate on our terms. Everything that we did, we had to get a waiver for. We didn't actually grow a broken Medicaid system. The Medicaid program's going to decrease by 35% this year. There's actually, you can look it up, it's on, Google it, 117,000 people off of Medicaid this year. To say that it grew is simply not true. 117,000 people off of it this year alone. I could go on and on, but the simple point is I think we can, the private option makes the healthcare system a little bit stable for our state, our consumers, and our providers until we can repeal Obamacare. You can disagree with me, and that's fine. We'll talk about everything else on my push card that we agree on, and you can hopefully still support me at the end of the day. We're in a really difficult spot trying to deal with this law until we can get it repealed.
Thank you.
Any additional responses from either Scott or David?
Sure. I'm in the long-term care business myself, and 9 years ago I used to accept Medicaid, and 9 years ago I gave them my provider number. Now this was not based on any kind of political ideology at the time. I was tired of the state being involved in my business. Now to get the state out of my life, I had to give up money. That was the trade-off. One of my big chief concerns with the private option and with Obamacare in general is that I look at Medicaid and Medicare, and I'm going to be somewhat fairly knowledgeable about these programs because I'm around them on a daily basis. I'd like to call it fraud, but it's not because it's legal. There's a lot of waste within it. A lot of services that get provided that are serving no benefit whatsoever. As a private business owner who doesn't take any state or federal money, somebody's got to pay for all this, folks. This money has to come from somewhere. Folks 65 and older are not paying a lot of taxes. Their capital gains taxes are not that much. 18 and younger, they're not paying any taxes. People my age coming up, well, they're not going to be working and producing like some of the people in this room are. So where I'm getting at is our tax base is shrinking. And I don't know of any government program that once you get it going and once you get it started, that it ever just goes according to plan. It always costs more. It never achieves. If it was going to solve a problem, I'd be on board. I don't think it's going to solve anything. It's going to enable it. I think we could say that it's taking people off the Medicaid payrolls, but we're taking federal dollars, we're taking federal Medicaid dollars, and we're going to pay for this through Medicare cuts as well. We're going to take these federal dollars, which the federal government doesn't even have to give us in the first place, because they're already trillions of dollars in deficit. And so before you can address a new program to ask for more money, how about you be accountable for what you have and how you're spending it? I mean, that is something that its fundamentals is one of my chief concerns, is that if we could go back through a fine-tooth comb and start looking at all these services and seeing how the money's being spent and what the benefits coming out of it, and then end up and say, well, we're running pretty efficiently, we need something else, I'd be willing to listen. But that has not been a case that has been made by anybody, which is start on your front doorstep, then go out from there.
David?
I would like to say that I have some agreement with both of the other candidates, and then some disagreement there. I made this statement last Friday night that I was in principle in favor of the private option, because I felt like it was the best selection that we had, given the fact that we had the Obamacare rammed down our throats. I certainly was not in favor of Obamacare. I am not in favor of Obamacare, and I am hoping that we can get a majority in the Senate that or maybe even a Republican president. I don't know if we need them both to do it, but we're certainly going to need one or the other, and put this thing back to rest. Now, I think when we do that, if we can do that, and I'm all in favor of doing that, I think we're going to have it's going to be sort of a mess for a while, because we got to go back and find our way again to where we get back on our own and sort of get things lined up again. One of the reasons that I said that where I was today, the fact that we had Obamacare, that I was in favor of that. I didn't have to vote, of course, because I wasn't down there to vote, but is that we have 100,000 poor families that are getting medical care today that was not getting medical care last year. Our hospital here, our CEO said that the revenues at the hospital were up $100,000 in January over where they would have been if we did not have the private option. The $100,000 that they received would have been services rendered through the emergency room for no pay. And I don't tell you, I don't know what the solution is, but I know where we're going is not where we want to go. Right. But sometimes we do have to make choices while we're trying to get there that we don't like. And all I can tell you is that I'm a conservative. I think, I don't know what I should say this night, Obama is the worst president we have had.
Everybody knows.
So you know, I don't want to say that if I was there and I had voted for the private option, that I would be so endorsing that program. I would not be. I just think temporarily it probably was the best way to go. Now, I understand that 75% of this room, or maybe more, maybe 100%, would disagree with that. But I can tell you that the folks that were in the Senate and the House in Little Rock, 78% of them agreed with it. And that's why we have the private option now. Because I think given where we were, it was probably consensually the best way to go for this next year. If next year we don't like it, we can throw it out. You know, we're going to have that choice to make apparently every year. I don't know if it's a renewable thing, but I think it is. We're going to vote every year. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Either candidate that can answer this question, and we hear that because of the private option, that Medicare is going to be cut drastically. I'm wondering, as an individual who uses Medicare, what am I not going to have now with these draconian cuts? What will be denied me that I could have done last year that I won't be able to do next year? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Let me try that since I'm on Medicare, and I'm obviously the only one standing up here. Being 12 years older than these two guys, if you add them together. And I feel really honored to stand between these fine two young men, let me tell you.
Don't you exploit their youth.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I break a little there?
How'd you like to be in my shoes as old as I am? Did you take an aspirin and go home?
You know, I hope I get to be in your shoes as well. I assume you're older than I am. But in any event, I can tell you, I have not seen, my Medicare dropped this year, my Social Security dropped a little this year. Nancy deposited their direct deposit in the bank. She can tell you how much they were. I don't know how much, $10 a month or something. But the Medicaid premium that we pay went up. So, you know, so we lost on both ends of that. Now, what that amounts to at the national level or at the state level for everybody that suffered that the way I did and the way many of you did, I don't know what that amounts to, but it can be considered. It doesn't really affect my life that much. I don't think it affects, well, okay, I agree, and that's what I said a while ago. We don't like it next year. I mean, if it changes drastically, we will have a choice to make every year. And that is why you want folks like Missy Irvin and one of us down there that's from up here in the hills, that's conservative, that they help make those choices to try to bring this control back closer to home.
Scott, you I'd like to answer, but I'll let Scott go first.
Sure. All I can tell you is, like, obviously, now I've got 10 or 12 more years before I get to Medicare, and if it's still there, I'm going to enjoy it. But as far as the specific services that are going to be cut from the program, I cannot tell you what specific services are going to be cut. I know that money's going to be cut. I know that just tax increases alone are not going to be able to fund this program. And so just on that, I'm learning now in this new arena that I'm in, is that don't let anything leave your mouth that you can't go back and back up. So I want to do a little bit of research as far as any specific services that are going to come be cut via this program. But I can tell you that money is going to be taken from Medicare to pay for some of this.
I'd just like to say that everything you said is not true. Medicare is a federal program, it's not a state program. The private option has absolutely nothing to do with Medicare. ACA, as I said earlier, cut $600 million. I'm sorry? No, ma'am, it doesn't. I'll be happy to walk you through it, but it has absolutely nothing to do with it. Medicare is a federal program. ACA cut $600 million out of Medicare, which is what you're seeing. It's in the form of reimbursement cuts to providers, and then also in the form of changes to Medicare Advantage program. If you read about, the deadline for that, I think, is approaching. I believe it's April 8th, where Medicare Advantage is going to be eliminated. So that's one side of the cuts. The other side is reductions in provider reimbursement rates. Those are the things that are affecting things like Baxter Regional, the reimbursement rates, and also the RAC audits, which let the federal government come in and retroactively recoup on a contingency-based audit payments that they make to Baxter Regional and other hospitals. Baxter Regional is 70% Medicare. It's the top 5 hospital in the country for Medicare reimbursement rate. So I would just simply say, ACA cut Medicare, it's here to stay until we repeal it. That's part of the $600 million that was pulled out to get CBO to score the ACA budget neutral. We absolutely cannot do anything about it on a state level except for help our providers make up for it on the back end by eliminating some of their uncompensated care, making sure they don't close their doors and stop providing services to people like you in the room.
One more question, Dale.
Be here with you tonight to talk about my qualifications to represent you in Senate 17 in the Senate District 17 for the next 4 years. I'd like to introduce my wife, Nancy. I think most of you all know her. We've been married for more than 20 years. We got married in the house we live in and still live there. So she's pretty well known to the folks around Mountain Home. As many of you know, I've been the mayor of Mountain Home for the last 7+ years, and Nancy and I have 4 grown children and 7 grandchildren. Through partnership with the Mountain Home Schools, the Master Gardeners, Dr. Ray Stahl and the Twin Lakes Soccer Foundation, the Dog Park Supporters, North Arkansas Electric Co-op, Mountain Home Youth Baseball Association, Girls Twin Lakes Softball League, Carl Wayne's Nursery, Crawford Electric, Friends of the River, ASU Mountain Home, and many others. The City of Mountain Home has, in spite of the poor economy, continued to make huge improvements to its parks, streets, and water and sewer systems. I know all of you probably have noticed in the ice storms recently that we had, the cleanup job on the streets that was done by the Mountain Home Street Department. In '09, when we had the terrible ice storm, that the rapidity at which the city got it in gear and started picking up the debris along the streets and taking them over on Rodeo Drive, where Dr. and Mrs. Knox and Dr. Petkovich let us borrow some of their land there to form those burn piles. We got a permit from ADEQ within 3 days, and while we did not like burning, that was not the most environmentally friendly thing to do, but it was so much faster than trying to chip and grind that we felt like it was the right thing to do. But if you remember that, the remodeling of the old county library, I'm sure many of you have been in the old county library building that the city contracted to purchase about 8 years ago. I think we paid $200,000 down and then $100,000 a year without interest for 3 years until we paid the $500,000 purchase price. Then we took possession of it when the library moved over into its present location, the Donald Reynolds Library facility. But we added 28 rooms inside that library and remodeled the entire interior of that. The city appropriated $20,000. The community gave $65,000 in gifts, and we took the prisoners from the county jail and worked there for 4 months, 7 days a week, most of the time 8 in the morning till 9 at night. The prisoners didn't want to go back at 4 o'clock. They wanted to stay because we fed them a good hot meal at lunch, and they wanted to stay for a hot meal in the dinner time. But when we insured that building last year, the appraisers appraised it at $1,250,000. And I think that, why do I say this to you? Because I think that we need to get back to the point where we do things with the people. The people do things with their leaders. Back in the old days, we went out and built our own roads. Well, we can't do that today because it takes, we can't go out and build a super highway, but there's things that we can do. Community gardens, ballparks and fields, and cleaning up the streets, the rivers. And we need to get back to that grassroots type of living. I believe for a community to obtain betterment, to overcome challenges that must be involved with its citizens. I would like to see us start. I just came back from Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago, up there with the National League of Cities. And one of the talks that I listened to there was how to involve communities back with the people. And one of them was for churches to get involved between the churches and the school, not for religious teachings, but for education purposes. Where I know at First United Methodist Church, where I go, every Wednesday afternoon we send buses to the schools, and they come over there and they can elect the activities that they're involved in. It is not Methodist indoctrination. It is just simply they can go to a study hall, they can go to music, they can participate in the choir, and then they're fed dinner, and then their parents pick them up and take them home. I'd like to see this happen among many other churches where the children would have the option of what classes they need and what they're going to take, and we would have volunteers there to look after them. And I don't know of any program like this anywhere, but I think it would work. And I think that we need to get back involved. Who knows their community better than the citizens that live within that community? Good government comes from the roots up, not from the top down. We are tired of the unfunded mandates that we get from our federal government. And I would say to some degree we get some of those from our state. And I do not like those unfunded mandates, and I think that we need to have a greater voice in what we do on some of these issues. I'm an environmentalist. My wife and I are very active in the recycling programs. I was chairman of the board at the Baxter County Day Service Center for 21 years, and I was on that board for 29 years and helped get recycling moved over to that. It became the county's and the city's recycling center while I was there. And I know that Judge Pendergrass and I have both been involved in helping to make improvements over there. with city and county equipment and employees. Arkansas is a unique state. We have beautiful lakes and rivers, which I promise to protect to the best of my ability. Last Friday, I spent most of the day over at Hackler Elementary School. And if y'all noticed that over there, there's about 70 to 100 new trees out there. We started last year in a partnership between the schools and the city, where the city sends equipment. I had 2 employees from the Parks Department, 2 employees from the Water Department, and we planted another 30 trees last Friday. That makes about 100 over there and about 40 over at Pinkston Elementary. Sometimes we are given those trees, sometimes people donate money for it.
30 seconds, Dave.
All right, sir. Thank you. While I greatly enjoyed working as mayor, I'm more excited about the challenge of representing you in the Senate for District 17. I promise to represent the people of Senate District 17 with the same dedication, hard work as I have done in Mountain Home. I invite you to call or visit me to discuss any interest or concerns you may have. I will listen to your concerns, return your phone calls, emails, or text messages, and truly represent your voice in Little Rock. Thank you for your time. I will ask you for your vote. Thank you.
And I can back this up with audio on demand. He said there will be massive cuts to Medicaid and Medicare on the federal level to pay for the Arkansas private option.
That's right.
It's on audio on demand. Log it in.
I'd be happy to listen to it. I mean, I do think that.
And I even challenged him because ASA came out in favor of private option and Griffin's against it, and Griffin heads back to ASA. And he says, I will speak to ASA about that. It's on, I've got the recording to back.
I mean, there are certainly, I will say this, and then, I know we'll probably get to the point where David wants to speak, but I'll say this. I mean, again, there's going to be honest disagreements with everybody about how we deal with ACA as long as it's the law. That's an honest disagreement. And I've got best friends, my dad disagreed with me, okay? So, this is a very complex issue, and the state's in a tough position, but there are no cuts to Medicare as a result of the private option. There's just absolutely none. I'll be happy, if anybody can show me one, I'll be happy to talk about it with you. There's $600 million cut from Medicare by ACA out of the federal government, by the federal government, out of the state, every year. We can't do anything to stop that. It hurts seniors, it hurts access, it hurts our providers, but it has nothing to do with the private option.
Okay, if you have any further questions or wish to discuss anything with the 3 candidates, please do so at the end of the meeting. We're running short. Would like to thank all 3 of you.